This is a Cut 50 50 amp plasma cutter. This model happens to be advertised as a coral, but for the most part all Cut 50s are pretty much built equal, with slight variations to layout. Welcome to the 1-year review of this plasma cutter. Hi, I'm Dale, and this is Dale of All Trades. I'm constantly finding myself having to repair something, install something, or find out the hard way that something just isn't worth the money. So I figured I'd take you along for the ride, and hoping along the way to inspire you to try your hand at some repairs yourself. You can expect to see repairs, reviews, how-tos, and anything in between. A special thanks to anyone who has already subscribed. Please consider subscribing. The more the merrier in this journey. So let's figure out what's going on now and get to it. Wow, everybody. Before we get started in this video, I just wanted to take a second and thank everybody for all the views and comments on my last video about this plasma cutter. It, to this date, is still the highest viewed video on my channel, and it just blows my mind. So thank you so much. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for more content like this and tons of other stuff. Also, drop a comment. I like hearing from everybody, and I reply as fast as I can to all of you. Also, be sure to watch to the end of this video, as I will be doing pros and cons of this unit after owning it for 1 year. Okay, moving right along here. This is the Cut 50 50 amp plasma cutter. This particular model says coral on the side, although stated in the intro, all these Cut 50s are pretty much all the same. If you haven't seen my original review and kind of explanation and tricks and tips video on how to use this thing and set it up, go ahead and check it out over here, or you can follow the link in the descriptions of this video. In the first video, I had stated that you have to keep contact with the metal at all times during the cut. That's not 100% true. You really don't have to. You just have to contact the metal on the initial cut and start of the cut. After that, you can lift the tip up a little bit away from the material as you cut. Also, I would like to state that this plasma cutter is not high-end professional grade, meaning you wouldn't find it in a high-end metals shop or any professional setting, and it shouldn't be held to that standard. You're not going to be using it for extremely prolonged cuts every single day, 8 hours a day or longer. You also shouldn't expect professional quality cuts out of this machine. It's something cheap and intended to get you started and get your foot in the door for using a plasma cutter. Now that I got that out of the way, in my previous video I went through initial setup, kind of unboxing, and general overview of this machine. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that topic. What I do want to talk about is the general setup of the machine as a whole, because I've been getting a lot of questions about that. First off, the air compressor. This is it right here. It's nothing special, just a 2.5 horsepower single stage, 21 gallon Harbor Freight air compressor. I think its max is 125 PSI. Now, you could go smaller. I wouldn't recommend it. A good rule of thumb for air compressors is bigger never hurts. So if you have something bigger than this, great, you're already sitting good. 2-stage preferably. This is a single stage, as I said. It's not that big a deal, but you may once in a while find yourself waiting for the air compressor to cut up if you're doing a really long cut or multiple cuts where the air is continuously running. Anything smaller, you're gonna find yourself stopping often waiting for the air compressor. You can do it, but you gotta have patience. My regulator is still set, depending on the metal I'm cutting, anywhere from 25 PSI to 40 PSI. I haven't found a need to put it anywhere else. I stick with 240 volt cuts now. I really don't bother using 120 volts anymore unless I'm in a pinch and I really need that 120 outlet and don't have access to 240. You just get a better cut with 240, better quality, quicker, just better all around. Now, if you don't have access to 240 volts, no problem. It cuts just fine with 120. I find it does a way better cut though with higher voltage. Another good question I've gotten is, what size circuit should you run this on? Now, if we're talking 120 volts, I wouldn't go lower than 20 amps. And I'm no electrician, so for your situation, whatever you're looking for to get out of your plasma cutter, your garage, your shop, etc., it might be best to just call an electrician, have them come out and give you their opinion. As for a 240 volt circuit, if you run this on the same circuit as you're running a welder on, you're probably going to be safe. So that being said, I'm not going to name exact things you should use because, as I said, I'm not an electrician. So if you have specific questions, they're the best source to go to. All right, let's take a quick break from my rambling and check this thing out in action. All right, pros and cons. Now, I think there's a lot more pros than cons with this unit, especially for the price point it's at. Speaking of price point, that's one of the pros. It is a very affordable unit to get yourself started in the plasma cutter world. Also, in my personal opinion, it's well built. It's reliable, at least my unit has been. I haven't had any issues. It's never even overheated on me. It's easy and straightforward to use right out of the box. It makes for a quick cut that doesn't superheat the metal, and it allows the metal to cool quicker. There's no special gases or tanks needed like a torch. You can just hook this up to an air compressor and electricity and you're ready to go. Another plus about this, which kind of goes without saying, is you can use it on 120 volts or 240 volts. No matter what power source you have, you can use this. Now, I will like to add that I ran across a couple of these Cut 50s that don't actually offer a 240 volt outlet, so I'm not sure if you can use them on 240 volts. So that's something to pay close attention to when picking out the model if you're specifically wanting that dual voltage capability. The last one is it's very small and portable. If you wanted to throw this thing in your truck, bring it over to a buddy's house and help him out with a project, it'd be really easy to do that. Okay, moving on to the cons. Some of these really aren't that bad, just more of an irritant. The first one being, it really lacks a lot of instructions for setup or just general use of the machine. And the instructions that it did come with were really bad broken English, so you might find yourself with a little bit of trial and error during setup. Plasma cutters in general, you aren't going to be cutting super thick metal with, but you can't cut anything thicker than 3/4 inch, and it takes everything this thing has to do so. Although mine has lasted a year, longevity is a question for this price point. I think you'd be probably pretty happy to look at 1 to 3 years out of a unit like this. Another negative, which I haven't experienced myself because I give it multiple breaks in between cuts, but these are prone to overheating. So always keep an eye on that overheat LED when you're cutting. Not sure if I need to say this, but I threw it in there anyways. You're not going to be using this machine like a torch, meaning you're probably not going to be using it to get seized nuts or bolts out of any situation you find them in. They're mainly used for cutting, and that's about it. If you're looking for multi-purpose cutting and heating to get these bolts out, you're gonna have to get a torch also. The last negative, and it's really not that big of one, and it does state it when you buy it. It's not a pilot arc, meaning you're not going to be cutting through metal that has paint on it or extreme rust buildup. You're gonna have to be using fairly clean metal and cutting non-painted surfaces. Now there are ways to convert these into a pilot arc, which I'm not gonna get into today in this video, but if that's something you're wanting to do on your own risk, it is something you could do. Well, that about does it for this video. It was a lot of talking and I hope I didn't bore you. My conclusion on this plasma cutter is that it's a great choice for a weekend warrior, or even maybe a small startup shop, someone who's not going to be using it 8 hours straight out of the day. Something for quick cuts once in a while. And for the price point, you really can't go wrong. As always, everybody, thanks for watching. You guys are awesome, and I will see you in the next video.